First day of work.
Well, wish me luck.
You'll do fine.
Wanna be on time.
Hey, Bill, wanna go fishing?
Nope, I'm going to work.
Wanna make a good impression.
I hear there's a new kid starting today. Oh, I hope he's cute. We're open in a few minutes,
But
sir.
if they think it's a little late to start a new profession, you got what it takes, you know it's true. Bet you'll show them a trick or two.
Let's see, that's 3 bacon, egg, and cheese biscuits, 1 egg McMuffin, 2 sausage muffin with egg, and 1 large OJ.
Are you sure you never did this before?
Thank you. Come again.
How'd it go?
I don't know how they ever got along without me.
Well, I could have told him that.
Hi folks, John Cordisco back again. Round 4 of the 47th Biel Chess Festival between Giri from the Netherlands, rated 2750, and Alexander Motylev. How much I butcher that name. It's Russian, rated 2698. That's a pretty good game. It's going to be a Slav. Let's get to it. We go through the first few moves here. We pretty much know the Slav, most of us. Knight c3, e6. Pretty much this move here, in part at least, indicates it's going to be a Slav. Knight to h4. Now, I like that. Once you go here, this bishop is pretty much blocked in. And I like that knight to h4 because it makes it so that bishop really has nowhere to go. Now, queen to b3. Bishop's not going anywhere, so it'll sit there. Queen to c7, and finally the knight does take, then h takes. Now, I've got my Fritz 13 computer on off screen. It's about a third of a pawn advantage for white, which is pretty much standard, being that white has the first move. And I also like the fact that white has the bishop pair already. I call it being up the minor exchange. g3, bishop, castle, castle. They're pretty much just developing out. That's a good spot, I think, for that bishop. There wasn't much hope for here and here before, so I kind of like the fee and kettle. Maybe down the road, this diagonal here would be really, really important. C takes, E takes, F3. Now that one I'm not real keen on, even though that is the computer suggestion. I know why, of course. It controls the E4 square for a lot of good reasons, one knight being there and many others. B5. The only thing I like about that is the pawn on C6 is a little backwards. Knight to E2, the knight's coming back. Queen to B6. King moves. I think that's just a precautionary move. Later down the road, this queen is bearing down this diagonal, might be a problem. C5, queen to D1. It makes sense, actually, to bring the queen back. Computer has suggested maybe knight to C3 instead. After queen to D1, rook F to E8, G4. Now, believe it or not, over the last few moves, black's got a small advantage, third of a pawn. I mean, you know, for us guys, for us amateurs, it isn't much, but for these guys, if they can pick up a third of a pawn or half a pawn on a move and an opening, they think it's huge. Rook A to D8, bishop D2. Computer thought that maybe G5 was worth considering, because after knight to H5, F4. And to be honest with you, I kind of like that. It's awful gutsy. It opens up the diagonal for the light squared bishop for white. Controls a lot of key squares. We'll see how it works out. After bishop D2, G5, clapping that right down now. A4, B4, A5, hitting the queen. Queen to B8. And D takes. It's a toss-up between the bishop and the knight to take. Motylev took up with the bishop. Oh, how bad am I going to... Did I butcher his name? Knight to D4. Knight to E5. Interesting position to be sure. It's that A pawn is advanced too far. The B pawn for white is backward. It's got a small advantage for black, 3/4 of a pawn. That's probably why. But black does have the isolated D pawn. B3, rook to C8, rook to A2, which I thought was interesting. Let's go back here. That is the computer's choice. Or bishop to E1, double guarding the knight on D4. Rook to A2, knight C6, bringing the knight around. Rook C2, knight takes the pawn. Queen to B1. Now, white sacrificed the pawn. We're going to have to see how this works out. Bishop B6. Rook takes C8. Rook takes. Knight F5. Threatening, of course, the fork here. Picking up the exchange. Forced to cover that square. Queen to B2. Let's take a hard look at this position here. Actually, I kind of like the computer's move. I like F4. Just open it up after rook moves. Queen to D1. Now I like that a lot better. But that's just me. Queen to B2. Bishop F8. Brings the bishop right back. Gets it right out of the action there. Opens up the C file. E4. D takes. Bishop takes. E takes. Bishop takes. Now that was an interesting exchange of pawns. White still has the bishop pair. It's anybody's game here, to be honest with you, even though it's about 2/3 pawn advantage for black. Granted, white's down a pawn, but I mean, there's all kinds of complications here. I mean, to read this is incredibly complicated. Queen to B5, hitting the rook. Rook moves. Rook to D8, and rook to G1. Now, those of you that are wondering, bishop takes F6 after check, king, queen F1. That ends that. That's what the computer just showed what would happen if. Rook to D3. Queen to E2. Let's go back a couple of moves here. I think this is where black miscues. After rook to G1 for white, computer calls for a strong move is queen to D3. But instead he went rook to D3, and now the computer has a dead even, 0.00. Queen to E2, black pinning the rook. Knight to H7, hitting the bishop. Knight D4, hitting the queen. Queen to D7. Queen takes. Knight takes. Down the exchange now. Rook to D1. I tell you, that was a tricky sequence. Bishop C5. Knight. Queen takes. Rook takes. Knight takes. Bishop takes. Black's got a knight and a pawn for the rook. Is this still saveable for black? I don't think it is. Even though I do have to say his pawn is on a dark square, black, on a B4, so the bishop can't get it. But I still think he's doomed. It's an over 2-point advantage on the computer. Knight to E6 is probably the best move, and that's what he did. Rook to D7, here it comes. Bishop. Bishop D5. Knight to D8. Now the computer calls for bishop to C4, which I think is a very natural move. H4, king to G2. Giri decided to go rook to E7. King F8, hitting the rook. Rook to E4, hitting the pawn. A5, guarding the pawn. King to G2, getting your king up. As we all know, a king is a very powerful piece in the endgame, especially with queens off the board. G5, stopping the white advanced pawns. King F3. F6. Looks like maybe black could hold this, but there's really no way. After H3, bishop to C7. Rook C4. It's just the power of the rook over a minor piece. Bishop B6. Rook E4. Bishop, what else can he do? Rook to E2. He's bringing the rook around. Bishop B5. Rook A2, hitting the pawn. He has to come back. And then rook to C2. And that's where Motylev from, I believe it's from Russia, resigned. Give an example. After back to bishop to C6 again. King to E4, and black's just doomed. Anyway, folks, that's the game from round 4 of the 47th Biel Chess Festival. I hope you enjoyed it. Please, everyone, if you would subscribe, I would appreciate it. And also click the like button. That would be awesome. And I want you all to remember, if you think chess is just a game, you're not playing it right. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.
Aren't you hungry? Aren't you hungry?
Hold it! I just have to tell you about the Aren't You Hungry for a Whopper game at Burger King. You can win a Whopper or a Coke, $1,000, $5,000, even $1 million. There's a 1 in 6 chance of winning a prize. Okay, back to the most important reason to come to Burger King, the food.
Aren't you hungry? Aren't you hungry? Aren't you hungry for Burger King now?
You could win $1 million.